Hi, and welcome to the Desert Lady Diaries podcast, a weekly conversation with women who found their home in the Mojave Desert. I'm Dawn Davis, and this is episode number 59. If you're a first-time listener, welcome. And if you're a returning listener, thank you so much for coming back. If you'd like more information about the podcast, previous guests, want to catch up on previous episodes, or just want to drop me a line, it's all at the website desertladydiaries.com. And I invite you to engage with me on social media, Facebook and Instagram at Desert Lady Diaries, and on Twitter at Desert Lady Diary. I'll be out at the Bazaar at Belfield Hall in Landers this Saturday, October 5th. I'll be inside Belfield Hall, so be sure to go inside, have a famous chili dog and fries, and then stop by and say hi. I'll be doing mini interviews, so I hope you'll come by. And thank you, Mike Stillman, for your generous donation to the podcast. I really appreciate your support. My conversation today is with musician Myshkin Warbler. Her first visits to the desert were as a kid on vacation from Indiana with her Dutch parents. Her sister taught her a few chords on the guitar, and at 22, Myshkin left Indiana behind to tour the States and beyond, playing her music. If you haven't heard Myshkin's music, you'll want to listen all the way to the end for a song. Welcome back to Desert Lady Diaries. Today I am speaking with Myshkin Warbler. New Orleans-schooled, gypsy-spirited, endlessly curious, Myshkin is a rare bird among songwriters, creating darkly joyous, compellingly complex songs, work that slips under the skin and stays there. Literate, political, heartbreaking, soul-building, and eclectic as hell. Her 9 solo records travel through raw folk, gypsy swing, torch jazz, punk poetry, desert blues, and electronic post-rock. Her latest, Trust and the High Wire, is a potent distillation of her 5 years in Joshua Tree, spinning around the gravity of a big love story. It is also a musical accompaniment to Jenny Q's book, Held Together, and a showcase of some of the high desert's sweetest talent. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Dawn.
You're welcome. Tell me, what was your first experience with desert?
With desert generally.
Mm-hmm.
My parents were Dutch immigrants, and the Southwest was one of their favorite places to go camping because it was so very different from where we were living, where I grew up, which was Indiana, and also where they came from. So Utah, Colorado, Arizona, when I was a child, New Mexico. And then I ran away from Indiana finally at the age of 22 or so.
Oh. I thought you were going to say you were 15.
It took me a while. And I ended up in New Mexico, northern New Mexico, for about 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there things that you remember about the desert when you were on those trips that you took that stuck with you at all?
Just loving it very much. There's a famous family story in my family. That I would always climb to the tallest rock I could and scream, "I'm in heaven." And I think I really appreciated the desert from a young age.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Your trip to Joshua Tree, was it one of your first trips was touring?
I had been through here a few times before, but I don't even remember some of those occasions.
I think that happens a lot out here. Yeah.
Yeah. In way younger years. I'd been through a few times in my memory, and then I landed here after meeting Jenny on tour, and I was touring in the spring of 2013.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you brought your Trust in the High Wire CD.
I did.
And a booklet that accompanies it, and I read a poem that is absolutely beautiful and talks about your relationship with Jenny to this point, because the story's not over. I loved the part about the map and how you were crisscrossing each other's paths. Can you talk a little bit about?
Well, we were both travelers, for a long time, and as we have spent time together, we've kind of talked about our past and realized that we were in the same place at the same time on numerous occasions. And kind of doing the same thing sometimes. So
right.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that is what moved you to this desert.
Indeed.
Was your love of Jenny Q. So talk to me about how that all came together with meeting each other and then making this decision that you're going to come to live in the desert.
So I've had a pretty restless life. I was in New Mexico, like I mentioned, for a few years, and then I was on the road for a few years in a little school bus that I made into home, and then I was in New Orleans for 10 years, and then I was in Oregon for 10 years, and the second half of that, I was in the woods in Southern Oregon.
Was this the permaculture?
Yes. Okay. I built this house out of cob with a aid of many, many helping hands, people volunteering to get muddy and get dirty and help me build this studio house, little tiny 200 square foot tall thing. And it was gorgeous. And so I'd been living there for about 5 years. I'd finished the house, I'd finished a record, I'd started touring again, and I just started thinking about doing kind of half-time somewhere else and maybe going back to New Orleans for kind of half the year. And I was on tour with my friend Michelle McAfee from Southern Oregon, and we passed through. She said, we have to go to Joshua Tree. I love Joshua Tree. We have to go there. And so we came through, and we played at the Saloon. And Kristen Gass, Project Sleepwalker, joined us, and she was an old friend from Portland.
Oh, okay.
And she basically introduced me to Jenny. She had an inkling that we might like each other.
Ah, I see. And apparently you did.
I did.
She's a good matchmaker then.
She's a good matchmaker.
Yeah. So how long between that first meeting and then deciding I need to move?
We started writing, and then we started visiting, and so it was about 6 months later that I actually moved down here.
Right. Yeah. And how did that whole process go? I mean, packing up your stuff in Oregon, did you just sell most of it, or?
I didn't have a whole lot because I had done a big purge before moving to the woods, and I had actually already packed up a bunch because that summer there was fires very close to the land that I was living on. And so I had kind of packed all my most precious things anyway and stored them with a friend. So that was already done, which was convenient.
You're prepping.
Prepping for I knew not what.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it really didn't take much to get down here. And actually I moved in and then took off right away, like within the week, for a 2-month tour in Europe. So I didn't get back here till Halloween.
Yeah. Great time to come back.
Yeah, it was lovely.
Yeah. Coming from green Oregon to barren desert, how did that feel?
Aside from like all your cells having to adjust, spiritually and emotionally, I really, really love it very much. And I loved it the moment I got here.
Are there any things that you can name that lend itself to those feelings?
You know, I was already in a wide open space, but kind of hemmed in a valley, and so definitely the sense of distance here is obviously profound. Actually, I see, even though I was in the middle of the woods, I see more wildlife here than I did there, because they don't have as many places to hide, I suppose, from us.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I like that connection with the creatures a lot. I also had not found musical community in Southern Oregon. I had in Portland, but not really in Southern Oregon at all. And so I was amazed at the amount and caliber of musicians that I have found in this town and continue to discover. And it's really stunning. It's so the best of both worlds, being able to live rurally and have this much culture.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I agree. I know. I think I say this often, that on any given night, you could conceivably be in 3 places.
Indeed.
If you could clone yourself. Or, you know, I did that Saturday night. I went up to the Beatnik for 2 hours, and then I drove out to Wonder Valley to see something friends were doing. You know, so I hit 2 out of 3. But that's really stretching it. So I sometimes ask, when people move from other places, how did you find your community? But I think the music and just knowing Jenny and her involvement in the community.
Indeed, she was pretty firmly rooted when I got here. And then, of course, 2 months after I got here, she fell ill, and the entire community rallied around her and me and Yasmin. And I felt incredibly held. It was really amazing to see and to experience.
Yeah. And well, I'm about a quarter of the way through the book right now, and it's just amazing. And having interviewed Jenny a couple of months ago, I'm interested to hear from your perspective. I mean, you're in a new relationship generally with someone, and then suddenly they are on death's door, to just cut to the chase.
Indeed. I think that you're just in such adrenaline land for so long, and you're just kind of doing the next thing and doing the next thing, you know? And when you're in that kind of medical emergency situation, sometimes there isn't a next thing to do but just be there. of course, the home and most importantly Yazzie and the shop fell in my lap very suddenly, and Yazzie had only known me a couple months.
How old was she then?
7.
7, oh gosh.
7 or 8.
Yeah.
8. So she was amazing, and we made it work and
got through it. Right. Yeah. That's a test to a new relationship, isn't it?
When I first got here, Jenny said, the desert tests people, basically.
Yeah. It does.
I really didn't expect it that soon and that large.
At all. And then, had you met anyone in her family at that point?
I had met her sister, one of her sisters, and one of her brothers.
Okay. But this was a big coming
and her
together.
Dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And meeting everybody. Even
Indeed.
Was it Michelle that comes from Italy?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And in crisis and trauma
right.
and,
yeah. And probably, I don't know, was your experience that kind of all of any other preconceived notions or any, preliminary getting to know people kind of just falls by the wayside?
Oh, yeah, you're just in it.
Right. And you've had, would you call it, you've had a kind of a bonding experience with her family then?
I would say so. Very much, yeah. I mean, I kind of felt like I knew them as soon as I met them anyway. So there's that. But
right.
Yeah.
Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about your music.
Okay.
And how you even started playing music. How old were you? What instrument did you start with?
So many years ago. Well, I grew up in a musical family. My mom plays piano and sings. My dad played some piano and was extremely passionate about music. So they mostly fed me on classical music and some Beatles, and then my
which would be considered classic today,
indeed.
I guess. Yeah.
And then I have older siblings that were all musical and had big record collections that they left behind. And, my sister taught me to play a few chords on the guitar when I was 14 and lent me her guitar, and that's when I started writing songs.
Okay.
So, a long time ago.
Right. Well, and then you talk about finally leaving Indiana.
Indeed. I went to theater school. I was pretty convinced that I was going to act, and I did that for a while. And I've kind of come back to it in different ways. I've come back to theater in different ways since. And now I'm really kind of coming back to it in a new way of doing some writing, attempting to write a musical, and I've also been trying to make my shows more theatrical by creating the circus and doing kind of thematic shows.
And I wanted to go to that. That was a Christmas 2 years ago, I guess. Was it 2016 or 2017?
It was actually last year.
Was it last year? Yeah. And I totally missed it. So how did that idea come about, and what are some of the things that are happening while you're there? It's the Rabble...
The Royal Rabble. Royal Rabble Circus. I kind of just wanted to create a more theatrical event, and I really love the aesthetic of the circus, and it's just so much fun to play with. You have such a big palette of fun stuff to work with, right? And so I started working with Jorge Davies and Celine de Miranda, and we would get together and talk through ideas and just kind of create ideas around the songs. I wanted it always to be based on the songs and trying to bring... My songs are lyrically dense, and I think that in a live situation, they kind of like... They get felt, but they don't...
Maybe wash over
get,
people?
Yeah, they don't get not that much of it is caught, and so I'm really doing my best to try and make visual aspects of the songs so that they kind of sink in two ways.
Right. Well, and it's smart because people... Not that you're educating them, but they learn in different ways. And some people are more visual learners, and some people more audio. But if you put the two together, you've got many of your bases covered that way. So that's great. And costumes and
dance and just trying to bring things to life a little more. And then the last, and they kept kind of getting more cohesive. So I did 3 different versions at the Joshua Tree Music Festival in the last 2 years. And then the last one we kind of revived for the show at the Big Top at Wish and Zircon's Big Top, because they've always been involved as acrobats. And that one was actually built around this idea of 100 years of absurdity. I decided to pick a song for every decade and bring out the absurdity of our history. Which
Do we have that?
We are living in a very absurd
You've
moment.
got a lot of material now.
We have so much material. And we're all kind of like slogging through this madness, and to try and like look at it all and keep it present for ourselves, but in a different way, you know, with some humor and with some kind of historical context and with some with just a different perspective.
Well, and I appreciate you saying that about the historical context, because I feel very strongly about the news, including that.
Yes.
I find I watch the news every day. I watch local LA news, and then I have dinner with Lester Holt every evening. But what I don't, everything is just so quick, it's so soundbitey, and it's kind of almost, can we come up with a witty way to say this? No, you don't need to do that. What you need to do is say, this is what happened today, and these were the decisions that were made.
And here's how it might impact
exactly.
people.
Here's how it might impact you, and let's go back a little bit and kind of give you that historical context of why this is happening now.
Yeah.
And it's just too, I mean, I know this word is overused with the news, but it is very sensationalized. I wouldn't call it fake news. I would call it sensationalized.
Yeah.
Kind of to grab people's attention. Tune in at 11 and all that nonsense. But people need to understand why those decisions are being made and what has happened in the past that has brought us to this point. Especially with our relationships around the world.
Yes.
International is really hard to understand.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you're incorporating that, even though it's...
I'm always fascinated by history, and I'm always trying to kind of take the long view, because there's definitely patterns. There's definitely, and we can see in our current quote unquote leadership, those patterns have been used before. You know?
Exactly.
Those tools have been used before, and where those things lead.
Right. Which is pretty frightening.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ethnic cleansing is no joke.
No. And there's just too many places that they can go with that.
Yeah.
Now. It's just...
So...
Anyway.
So I do a circus.
Right.
Because God, it's just so easy. Heavy. We are living in this crazy, crazy time.
Yeah, it's very heavy for a lot of people, especially people that are... I don't know if this may be a blanket statement, but I feel like being someone who is an artist, we are much more sensitive and tuned in to that sort of thing with humanity and what's happening like that. And I think it really can weigh on a lot of people. And when you're in a town like we are, which is a small town, but filled to the brim with musicians and artists of every kind.
Yeah. Who have a hard time living on the surface.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of people have managed that trick seemingly. I don't know. It's hard to see behind people's masks, you know.
Right. True. Besides music, besides writing and running your household, what kind of things do you do for fun in the desert when you need a little break from that work?
Sit outside and look at the bunnies.
Do you have many up by you?
I don't have many breaks, though, it feels like.
Right.
But when
sometimes we have to force them upon ourselves.
Indeed.
Yeah. Like today I had work this morning, and then I was waiting for another thing to come in, and I was like, well, I probably have at least an hour. Let's use it wisely.
Right.
Go out front, sit in the chair, bring something to read, or just stare.
Just stare. That's kind of my favorite decompression, just staring.
Yeah.
I've been working on a bunch of visual stuff besides that book I gave you that goes with the record that's collages. So it's a collage for each song. I would kind of like to do that with all my records, actually. I'd kind of like to make a little book with lyrics and collages, because
albums,
it was such a fun project.
Albums
used to have that kind of stuff.
Those things, right? With a lot of photography and all the lyrics were in there, and
so many things have changed in this music industry that I'm not quite sure how to go about doing it full time anymore.
Right.
So I'm actually
unless you're constantly on the road.
Indeed, yeah. Which I used to be for almost 20 years, and it was It was all right, but life is different now.
Right, exactly. It's when you have no attachments,
Yeah.
really, and you can do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Just drop and go.
Yeah, and not make much money.
Right, yeah. Just get you to the next town.
Yeah.
And then make some money and get to the next town.
Right. And I've always lived in as cheap a situation as I possibly can in order to facilitate that.
Of course.
You know?
Yeah.
So I've been kind of expanding on the visual things I like to do. I've been kind of working on some cabins, and
Oh, nice.
I'm also in school right now at CMC for the first time in over 30 years.
Holy
I never thought I'd go
smokes.
back to school, but
Wow.
I'm taking a couple of graphic design classes, and
Excellent.
because I've already been using these tools, and so it's kind of fun to just dig in and actually
Right.
figure them out.
Well, or refine what you've already started doing,
Yeah.
which is great.
Expand that palette.
Yeah.
That's-
So no wonder you're tired. You're school, you're doing cabins, you're writing music, you're playing music. When you were touring, how did you go about booking those sort of things? And was it somebody in your group that took care of that? And especially like overseas, how did that all come together?
I've mostly done the booking. I was part of a duo in New Orleans with my ex-husband, and we did the booking together. And since then, I've done mostly my own booking, except overseas. And I've always been lucky to have people, usually that I'm touring with, that know the market better and that are
okay.
able to get gigs easier. And occasionally promoters that will book a tour and then drive you around and let you stay at their house and all that nice stuff.
Nice.
That happens in Europe.
Right. Oh, that's really nice.
Yeah.
So where have you been in Europe? Where did you tour with your music?
I did a lot in England and Scotland and Holland and Germany. And
Kind of
a few times
almost
in
like
Norway.
your people,
Pretty much,
right?
yeah.
Because
yeah.
your family's Dutch.
Yeah.
Okay.
So mostly Northern Europe. I really want to get south with the music. I've really been wanting to get to Spain.
That sounds fun.
Yeah.
And delicious.
And delicious. I've been working for many years on this theater piece that I just haven't had the time to fully dive into and kind of finish writing. It's based on poems of Federico Garcia Lorca, who is kind of the most famous Spanish poet, and he's beautiful. He's very romantic but smart, and like it's very kind of nature based and very musical. He was a musician too, and he was also a queer man that couldn't really be, quite openly himself.
Sure.
in conservative Spain of the 20s and 30s. So I've been working with his poems and making them into songs, and then starting to write a script to pull it all together. So that's been a big project. So I've been wanting to get to Spain to actually do some research and maybe find some collaborators over there.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
I think you should do it.
Yeah, I want to do that.
I think you should do it. So on a typical day then, because you've got school and you've got a daughter and you've got a partner and music to be written and all this stuff, what is a typical day like for you when you wake up in the morning and get started?
Well, today I got up and went out and did some work on a cabin, and then went to school, and then came to see you.
Oh my gosh. Well, you got to work on the cabin early, I guess, because it's cooler.
I don't really want to be doing that stuff in the summer. To tell you the truth, I'm kind of too old for that.
I noticed today that I like to have the windows open in the morning. I sleep with them open at night if it's cool enough, and it's getting cool enough. But I kind of gauge what time to put on the air by what time of day it is. And I think the windows and doors were open probably until about 11 today, which is, usually it's been 8.
Right.
8:30, got to shut everything up and go on lockdown, as I like to call it.
It's getting better.
Exactly.
Yeah. The end is nigh.
Yes, it's coming soon. Have there been any surprises or challenges besides the situation with Jenny that you've just recently been through in your life that you feel have really shaped you as a person?
Well, parenthood is a challenge that I never thought I would take on.
And you
I never
stepped
figured
right into
myself
that.
strong enough for that,
Right.
actually.
Yeah.
So that's probably been the biggest challenge and gift of the last 4 or 5 years.
When you were growing up, was there ever a thought in your mind that you were going to be a mom?
No.
Okay.
I had quite clearly made the decision that I wasn't going there.
Me too. Yeah. And
So it was a surprise to fall in love with someone with a child and be like, okay, well, here we go. And
Right.
it's amazing.
that must have been really difficult, though, because in reading the book, I can see that Yazzie had to stay with any number of people here. She was not coming to the hospital.
She was actually every week. We figured out a schedule pretty early.
You did? Okay.
Yeah, after the first 2 weeks or so, I was with her Monday through Thursday, and then she was with Barnett's family Thursday night, and then with her dad Friday and Saturday night, and then he'd drive her to the hospital on Sunday, and then I'd drive her home.
Okay.
So it was this kind of...
You did have quite a schedule, yeah.
Yeah, it was a pretty set schedule after that.
Maybe it's just because I'm reading different people's accounts of it and not sure
and
where...
a lot of the early days.
Right,
yeah.
exactly. Not sure where in the process they
Yeah.
were talking about it.
Yeah.
So, but still, it must have been difficult. And how has she... I mean, what was it like for her and Jenny when Jenny first came home? And then how has that progressed? Obviously, she's gotten older and has a different understanding of things, but how did that all...
She's amazing. She's very much... I mean, I think we're both really protective of Jenny, you know, and she's amazing. What parenthood has done for me personally is given me more patience with people in general and inner strength to just kind of keep coming back at a situation even though it's hard. You know, just keep opening my heart over and over even though it's hard.
Right.
And that's something I wasn't very good at before. I was kind of a runner, you know. I was very much a runner. So that's taught me a lot.
Right.
There's no running from a kid. You know?
They count on you to be there.
Yeah,
So,
and you make that promise and you do it.
right.
That's been extremely valuable from my growth.
Mhm.
You know.
Yeah. So if someone were to say to you, Myshkin, I'm thinking of moving to the desert, what would be some things that you would tell them or say to them about that decision?
Do it. My sister's about to move here, and I'm
wow.
I'm her cheerleader.
Is she coming from Indiana or somewhere else?
No, she's been in Sonoma for the past 5 years or so.
Okay.
So I'm very excited to have her here, and the community's, you know, as you know, and I'm sure everyone on your show talks about, the community is just stellar.
Well,
full
and
of
you
amazing
had
people.
a real taste of that very early
Yes.
on.
But you know, and I don't get out as much as I want to get out right now, just parenting and everything. But there is ample opportunity to integrate into this community, and it is the most wide, open-hearted that I have ever really come across.
Right. I mean, if you want to be out there, you can.
Yes.
And if you want to pull back, you can.
Indeed.
But
There's
if
that
people
too.
haven't seen you for a while and then they see you again, it's as if they just saw you yesterday.
Yes.
And I've spoken to a lot of musicians that come on. Either they had dabbled but weren't really into the music scene, or they had always wanted to play, and that people here really encourage them to do it, to just step out on that stage.
I think that happens with a lot of people here. I think there's a lot of people that are kind of inner artists that come out here and actually let it out, you know?
Yeah. Well, like you said, I think the space, and I talked with someone last week about this, the silence.
Yes.
It really then allows you to hear yourself and your inner thoughts and your soul speaking to you and kind of guiding you.
Yeah.
And that's important.
It's
and
vital.
This is a great place to have that happen, because it is such a supportive community and the landscape and space is conducive to it. So it's the perfect storm, if you will, for that sort of creativity.
I kind of feel that like small towns are the next frontier, because you know, like the cities got neglected and then kind of rebuilt, and now they're out of reach for most people that, you know, are looking to live in a cultural community.
Mm-hmm. Well, there are so many people here I know from San Francisco, or I myself was in downtown LA. Yeah, and then that wasn't everything about me moving here. Was the affordability, but I know for many people it is. Yeah, it's a thing. And I mean, it was only going to be a matter of maybe another year or two before I'd have to start thinking about moving out of there and somewhere else. So I think divine intervention happened when I came here, and I just followed it. Yeah, fortunately.
Yeah, so. Like you said, you can hear those little inner wisdoms
right
here.
Yeah, exactly. So it's the perfect place for someone to come if they're even kind of not sure about direction. Sometimes coming here can probably open that up and let them figure it out pretty quickly. Yeah.
And Jenny always says the desert keeps who it keeps and lets go who it lets go.
Right,
You know?
exactly. It's that kind of place.
Yeah.
Well, I hope it keeps both of us for a very long
Indeed.
time.
Me too, honey.
When is the next time somebody can see you if they haven't come to see you yet play out?
Or even if they have.
Or even if they have, yes, true.
The Joshua Tree Music Festival
Okay.
is coming right up, and it happens twice a year, and it is the sweetest little festival you have ever seen.
It's a lot of fun.
It's really wonderful. It's really all around artsy and all around sweet.
Right, because there's visual art. They even have stuff for the kids to do all day long.
Yeah.
Music all day and night, and relaxation stations where people can go and get massage and all that stuff. So
It's really special.
yeah. When are you playing?
So I'm doing 2 slots, actually. The band, I put together a fabulous 7-piece band that I'm super excited about. And we're going to be doing a really dreamy set on Sunday at noon on the main
Nice.
stage. And then Saturday at noon, I'll be part of a songwriter circle in the backstage Boogaloo stage.
Oh, okay, cool. I love that little stage back
Yeah.
there. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
it's
a
good.
lot of fun.
Good lunchtime.
Really cozy. Yeah, it's fun. Well, we'll get people out there. I'll put links to the festival. I will put links to your website.
Wonderful.
So that people can find you and buy that CD. And
Yeah,
hear
the new record is under Myshkin Warbler. I've had like 3 different names in my career.
Okay.
I'm settled now on Myshkin Warbler, and
Okay.
that's what the new record is under, and so you can find it anywhere online and
Okay.
at my website and all that stuff.
MyshkinWarbler.com.
That's right. You got it,
Perfect.
babe.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
I really appreciate
It's
it.
been really fun.
Thanks so much for listening to the Desert Lady Diaries podcast. I want you to know how much I appreciate you taking the time to tune in. If you heard something that inspired or enlightened you, I'd love to hear about it. Send an email to desertladydiaries@gmail.com or start a discussion on the Desert Lady Diaries Facebook page. Next week, join me and Vanessa Zendejas from AZ West and High Desert Test Sites. Those are the folks that bring you Linda Sibio's The Insanity Principle, Kip's Book Club, and so much more desert goodness. Thanks so much for listening. And now from her latest release, Trust and the High Wire, here's Myshkin Warbler's song, Trouble.
Kill me now while I'm happy. I'm in trouble. Every picture you send makes me swoon. And I know from my past how I grow so attached, and I die anyway when it all falls to one. So kill me now while it's all in the air, before we fall with our heels in the sand, and your hand in my hand. Hey there, don't sound so mad. Maybe I can pretend that I don't know my record, a loss on this track. I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble. Every picture that you send hits the mark when you're smiling.